The red-eyed man looked at the victim and realized what a loser he was, because although the kid was in wild pain, he was fully conscious, and even so he is silent about this situation. Apparently he has no conscience at all. At that moment, the father of the insolent man resigned himself, and decided to sacrifice his hand. It was scary. It was obvious from the man that he loved his son. For his sake he was ready to cut off his hand for him. At the same time, the desperate man swung and screamed fiercely. But Daven had previously told Zarin to prevent any accidents, and Charles's sword shattered into small pieces without touching his right hand. The terrified man breathed a sigh of relief, just like Zarin. Daven himself asked Charles to use his courage for the best case next time, after which the red-eyed man sits down on one knee in front of his father and reports that the problem has been resolved. At the same time, the gray-haired head praised his son again, and soon the black-haired one handed the miraculous stone to the priest, and also asked him to hurry, because every second counted. A guy in a white robe took an unusual artifact in his teeth and began to pray to the goddess of healing Guy to show mercy to the injured Revan, and after finishing the prayer, he cracked the stone and a miracle happened. The hand of the blonde youth returned to its place. Seeing the successful treatment, the worried father sobbed from the account. The guys certainly felt sorry for the miracle stone spent, but it was worth it. But Yulion can't stop regretting it, because this item could help even with mental problems. At that moment, Wilson was standing outside the gate. He overheard everything that was happening and then realized how cool his master was. Remembering the black-haired man's previous warning that sooner or later Wilson would have to make a choice, the servant chose loyalty, because it's much cooler. By evening, an enthusiastic Wilson came into Daven's room. He warned his young master that he would soon start cooking dinner. The ghost was surprised by such actions, but the Berserker reminds that Yulion himself wanted the guy to recognize him as a master. But exhaling the spirit, he said that he wanted much more than that. There was a sudden knock on the door, and Yulion was surprised that the servant had prepared dinner so quickly. But it was not Wilson who came into the room, but the priest. The man in the white cape introduces himself as Daven, a priest of the goddess Gaia. Daven is intensely interested in why the priest visited him, but he just wanted to express his gratitude for the help, and then the blonde-haired bespectacled man opened his mouth in amazement, because the priest held out a miraculous stone in his hand. The red-eyed man does not understand why the man is ready to give him such a valuable object, but the priest's answer is simple: this is a reward for such a noble act towards the young Mr. Revan. The man became a priest to help the sick go through all the hardships and return to his normal life. But today he could not help the young Mr. Revan. The priest doubted and compared the value of the miraculous stone in human life, and then, as if laughing, Vincent held out his miraculous stone. Therefore, the minister of the church is sincerely grateful to the black-haired guy, because with his help he was able to rethink his life. The red-eyed man declares that he did not do anything like that, and the priest realized everything on his own, but accepting the stone is a suitable way to pay tribute. The man thanks the young gentleman again and soon takes out something else, namely the temple tablet. With her help, he will be able to ask for help from the church, although the man hid the fact, but he became a priest of the second class. Hearing this, Yulion was even more amazed, but the black-haired man did not realize all the greatness of this achievement. At the same time, the ghost hurried to explain how awesome it was, because the second-class tablet allows almost everything, free use of the temple, as well as endless treatment. Soon the man in the white robe bowed and thanked the guy again, because he had learned a lot thanks to him, after which Daven said goodbye to the minister of the church. Now the ghost boasts that everything was not in vain, and a much more amazing acquaintance appeared than Wilson. Daven praised his invisible friend that he was already embarrassed. And remembering about the praise, he wants to tell Daven something, namely, the head of the family often eats alone. But there was a single case when he invited one of the family members to dinner with him after the meeting of True Swords. And this was the second child of Daenon. She won an incredible victory at the meeting of True Swords. And then the guys realized the possibility that this case could happen again, and even though Daven's body hurts terribly, but he decides to prepare for such an event earlier. At this moment, a breathless Wilson burst into the room of the red-eyed man. He could not utter a word, but tirelessly repeated the head of the family. At the same time, Vincent finished the sentence for his servant. He already guessed that the head of the family invited him to dinner, and asked the guy to bring him to him as soon as possible. Wilson is again amazed by the genius of his master, because Vincent was able to predict even this. The guy walks down the corridor and meets a woman with a flower in her hair. Since Vincent's mother died immediately as soon as she gave birth to him, The woman opposite him was his stepmother, but despite this, he still called her mom. The girl was surprised that the guy showed incredible achievements at the meeting of true swords, and she sincerely congratulates him on this. Her name is Versa Halam. Before her retirement she was a ruthless martial artist, and for this she was given the nickname Giant. At the moment, she is responsible for everything that concerns the House of Aiden. Soon she led the black-haired man to the head and he did not greet the guy, but immediately released his aura in order to check the air. Daven found it hard to breathe. The pressure coming from his father was reflected in his lungs, but he had not felt such power before. It turns out the head hit it earlier, and now shows his real form. The guy starts a conversation and he doubts that there is a need to deliberately put pressure on his son in a private meeting. Then the head asks why the red-eyed man thinks so. But the answer was simple. His mother publicly called him father. Looking at his subordinate, the man praised his son and removed the barrier. In fact, the gray-haired guy called the guy here for two reasons. The first is to congratulate him on his victory, and the second is to check Charles Aiden's fears. After all, if you remember, the madman reproached the young man for using demonic powers or attracting an apostle. At the same moment, Daven felt a terrifying look. It felt as if he was being seen on Skaz. After that, the head asks Vera if there is a possibility that the boy is an apostle, but the woman denies this fact, and also notices that the black-haired man has some kind of assistant in the bathroom. Winzen himself still could not understand what kind of terrible feeling he had just felt. Yulion assumes that this was a feature of Mom. She has eyes that can see the truth. Despite the fact that the boy is not an apostle, he was still interested in what kind of martial art his son used, because Winzen, who could not connect the image with his heart, miraculously cut off the hand of a martial arts master with 2 stars. At the same time, a woman with a flower in her hair says that this art is similar to the fencing of the hero king. At one time they said that he swung his sword in a strange way. That's how he managed to prevent any incredible ability of the enemy. It was also said that his sword was able to subdue the furious archdemon Daven. A piece of this false story confused the red-eyed kid. At this moment, the mother takes her son by the shoulders and orders him to talk about how he was able to learn such swordsmanship. This question put the black-haired boy in a stupor. He thought that it was his father who called him here. But now his mother is leading the dialogue, and he is also being interrogated in order to find out the origin of martial arts. Vinzen is about to utter a plausible explanation of this fact, but Yulion immediately stops him. The fact is that the woman opposite him is able to distinguish truth from lies with the help of her eyes, and if the Berserker tries to come up with some excuses, then, despite the lack of knowledge about that era, she will still expose him. At the same time, the guy got upset, because he is standing next to the one from which it is impossible to escape, but he cannot tell her that he is actually a man who lived 500 years ago. At the same time, the ghost asks to buy him some time, and he will definitely come up with something. But the girl was impatiently waiting for an answer. There was not much time. At the same time, the boy, with the help of telekinesis, asked Yulion to come up with suitable words faster, but the blonde youngster was so scared of her creepy look that not a single thought entered his head. At the same time, Vincent decides to cheer up his invisible friend and declares that only one step separates him from overcoming the wall of fear, and Yulion needs to take just the first step, and the rest will come by itself. And in order to inspire a friend, he promises to take the first step for him. At the same time, he tells his mother that he has received an epiphany. However, this was not the right answer. Vera did not believe in such nonsense, because the guy could not get an insight without any blessing. And the girl also explains that people associated with the dark arts receive enlightenment mainly. Vinzen didn't know this, because Yulion didn't say a word about these things. At the same time, the woman threatened the guy and announced that he was behaving suspiciously, and if he so longed, then he would need to go through the holy court. At the same time, Yulion asks the red-eyed man to repeat after him, and the black-haired guy says that if a woman considers him suspicious, then she should check him through the temple, because if Vinzen were evil in any of his manifestations, then a priest who owns a miracle-working stone of the 3rd class would not see this evil spirit in the boy. Versa recognizes this stone, because it was she who gave it to Dylan, and Vincent, in turn, accepted it as a gift from this priest. Having carefully looked at the guy with her own eyes, she realized that the black-haired man was not lying, because her eyes did not react in any way. At the same time, the girl asks again about the truthfulness of the fact that the 7th son learned the art of swordsmanship through insight, and he immediately answered his mother, namely, he said that he learned a lot through insight, but the guy did not learn fencing through them. Vincent says that he has been looking at the mysterious sword techniques for a long time, but decided to learn them only in the last days. The second half of the speech came from Yulion, because he really wanted to change, even if it might attract suspicion from certain people, but he decided that he would be taken for a coward if nothing else did. It was in this way that the two truths of Daven and Yulion came together, and these two Zeni were able to stand up against these mysterious eyes. The guys continued to make a speech. The black-haired man, according to Yulion, said that he felt that he had something to show, and only in this way he could surpass the Samion family and fulfill the mission of the Adenka family, and he also wanted to show how much stronger his relatives had become. And he also thought that his father would be able to make a correct assessment of what he had seen, since the temple had already confirmed, then only the decision of the head remained. After hearing the answer, the gray-haired man began to rub his beard. Versa knows that such a habit of a man is a good sign, although the head himself does not realize it, but he does it only when he is satisfied with something. Soon the father gave his permission to study this strange martial art, but the woman asked the gray-haired man about this decision, because this sword-wielding art is similar to the art of the great sword king Daven. Ver is interested. Did the man give his permission only because this art of fencing is similar to the fencing of the demon king? Because if the guy uses the art of the possession of the sword of the hero king, then the Samion family would make a scandal and accuse the swordsman of stealing their art? But the head says that he has considered all the details and made a decision. At the same time, since the head gave his approval, then it is he who will be responsible for his son, so the black-haired one should try his best not to cause any inconvenience in the future. Vincent realized that this was not just a warning. By this she also confirmed the decision of the head, and also gives her own permission. At the same time, the father got up from the table and announced that the guy showed excellent results at the meeting of the true swords, and not only that, he also proved his value as the direct heir of the Adenka family. So in honor of the above merits, the head gives the red-eyed one wish. Without having time to think, Daven says that he wants to become stronger. The father praised the guy for a good answer, but he is sure that Vincent himself will perfectly cope with this task, after which he asks again what he can do for his son. At this moment, Yulion flies up to Krasnoglazem and advises asking for access to the library, which is exactly what the black-haired man does. He asks permission to visit the family library. At the same time, the father declares that masters can enter there, only 3-star level, and asks if the son was able to connect the image with his heart. However, with a smile on his face, Vincent says that he could not achieve this, which is why he wants to take advantage of this opportunity, and be a spoiled child. At the same time, the father grinned and allowed the guy to enter the library, which only 3-star martial arts maters can visit, and after that he asks his mistress to squeeze the Crimson Lotus and says that this is a reward for keeping a promise at the tournament. The Crimson Lotus is a legendary sword used by his father when he was younger. It is the most valuable relic of their family. The guy himself notices that this is an incredible sword, because even though he is a lot of years old, but he still stands sharpest. After that Daven turns to Yulion, but he was in heaven with happiness. However, the black-haired man announces that only this success will not end. At first, the younger god was disappointed because he failed to summon the Spirit King, but now everything is different. Even the Spirit King Vrital would be able to achieve such results. After that, the guys leave the house and Wilson kindly greets them at the exit, but before Vincent leaves, she praises Red-Eyed for the work done, because she is sure that the guy has invested a lot of effort in studying techniques and training. She is very proud of him, and since he won the competition, then the guy, according to the customs, I have to go to the Crimson Fortress. The Crimson Fortress is one of the educational institutes under the ownership of the Adenka family. Only those who complete the training in the fortress will be recognized as full-fledged martial artists, and the requirements for entering such an unusual place are victory at the meeting of true swords and the subjugation of a low-ranking crimson demon. The guy doesn't even know what to say to his mother, and the ghost advises him to say so. The woman did not expect such an answer, because she thought that the red-eyed man had planned everything up to this moment. Also, Versa notices that because of that old sword movement, Vincent will surely find out the terrifying pain, and she is absolutely right. In that case, she declares that in this state, the guy will never defeat the demon in his current state. After all, a monster cannot be defeated with a single blow. Yulion is surprised and sincerely does not understand why Versa gives them such useful advice, but Vincent understands that Mother began to sympathize with them, because with the help of her eyes she could easily substitute them, but did not do so. Even if he doesn't like them, but she is clearly not hostile to them. The girl wanted to continue the narration about the abilities of the Crimson Demon, but the guy interrupted her and thanked her from the bottom of his heart for the advice, after which he promised not to let down his mother's expectations and said goodbye. The girl was surprised by this act, because she wanted to warn about the peculiarity of the monster, but he just left without asking about it. Versa saw in him an amazing martial artist without a shred of fear. Her heart trembles from the upcoming results of this talent, and she also hopes that her friend Sarvana, somewhere in the sky he watches his son, because today he made a big step as a martial artist. Wilson got up early in the morning and humming a melody hung up the young master's things. He was going to support his master today with all his strength. However, suddenly a powerful blow of the gods hits him on the head. The guy rubbed his head and did not understand what he did wrong this time. Sari appeared before him. She accused Wilson that he wanted to harm the young gentleman again. But the guy justifies himself, because as the girl could see, Wilson obediently performs his duties. Looking around, she really saw that the guy was working at everything. And the thing is that Wilson saw how much his young master had changed, so he, as his most loyal servant, also decided to change. But it's not that important. The maid is more interested in how is her young master? She never heard the rumors about the achievements of Red Eye. At this time, Winston and Julian were able to get into the family library, but how many books they did not look at, they could not find a suitable one, and the black-haired man was furious because he did not find a single book with a record of the events that happened 500 years ago. And Julian notices it too, because it is the books of this prescription that are missing from the library, and even if they found something, it would probably be only fairy tales about the Emperor of the Sword and the Great Demon. Although the ghost had predicted such an outcome, but it seems that someone deliberately erased the records of that time. After a little thought, Vincent decides to continue raising the level of his swordsmanship to defeat the Crimson Demon, and later he will be able to free his valiant name from the stigma of family shame. And since he can't achieve the image yet, then he needs a training technique. But at this time, the blonde-haired ghost was in stormy thoughts, because who is the person he called, the person who called Arslan a child, and also using the meth of the sword of the hero king? Julian directly asked the black-haired man who is he? The Berserker thought about it, because if he tells Julian directly that he is a great demon from fairy tales, then obviously the blonde guy will be shocked. But after thinking a little more, Red-Eye decides that it will be disrespectful to his friend Julian, as well as the previous owner of the body sharing the same fate with him, and exhaling, he decides to reveal his identity. The ghost himself has already caught fire with curiosity. But as soon as the guy said that his name, at the moment of pronouncing these words, Julian experienced severe pain and could not hear the identity, after which, covering one ear, the ghost asked to repeat again what Vincent said. And this time, a terribly loud sound rang in the younger god's head, as if someone was preventing him from learning the truth. The black-haired man jumped up and knocked over a stack of lying books. He was worried about his flying friend, but he said that everything was fine and now he asks not to repeat this speech anymore. He no longer has the desire to know who the black-haired one is. At this moment, Red-Eyed stumbles upon a strange book in a stack. It was called First Love at the Watermill. But it's strange why such a book was among the books on mana training? This is a family-run library and the chance that an ordinary love novel will get here is zero. After opening the book, the guys were pleasantly surprised. Someone kept a secret historical record in a hidden form. This is the truth of the past. But after scrolling a little more, the faces of both guys turned red. The ghost notices that retelling the truth in such a vulgar form is terrible, but Vincent finds advantages in this, because such a record will not arouse the enemy's suspicions. After that, the surprised guy turns to Julian, because the fact is that the main character of the novel in the book also has no image, but as a feature they have the power of love. That's how he realizes that the features are not used to awaken the mana flow, they are called upon by the mana flow, and to achieve this, you need to discard the whole theory of the image, and without the image, the freedom of mana will make all these things possible. But the ghost is shocked by the black-haired man, because if you accumulate mana without an image, you can die. But this does not stop Vincent, because right now he has in his hands the story of a man who saved mana without an image and survived, and with the help of a stream of mana and a feature, he will definitely be able to proate himself. But Julian is still worried about this method, because even with the help of an image it is dangerous to study the features. The special features are very difficult to study, so even martial artists are unable to teach them to others. But even though Daven himself recognized this method as dangerous, but he can't wait to test it. Coming out of the library, he meets a white-haired girl. she with tears in her eyes could not believe that her young master really defeated Revan Adenka. But despite such a wide spectrum from the girl standing opposite, Daven saw her for the first time, and then Julian hurried to tell him that before him was a maid named Sari. She was leaving for a short time because of an urgent situation that had occurred in her family. At the same time, Red-Eyed was visited by fragments of memories. He remembered that there was a person in this rotten world who was blindly attached to the loser Vincent. At the same time, he confirmed the rumors that reached the girl, and she began to wipe away the protruding tears with a smile on her face. She thought that after the competition, her master would be mocked even more. The worried Berserker did not know how to calm the woman in front of him and asked for help from his flying friend. But this hopeless one declares that there was no such art in spiritual or magical teachings. At the same time, Daven decides to improvise and apologizes to the girl for keeping what happened a secret, and also tells her that he is working hard to become a person that Sari will not be ashamed of. At this moment, a guy in a red uniform appears in the yard. Turning around, the girl recognizes Mr. Revan in the boy. The guy came here to say a few words to Vincent. After a few moments, the guys settled in the room and an awkward silence arose in the room. At the same time, the maid, to dilute the tense atmosphere, offers the audience a sandwich, but Revan suddenly gets up and grabs his sword. Julian and the black-haired guy tensed up, and then the angry Revan declared that he had come here to pay back for the events at the meeting of True Swords.